welcome back to another episode of Revealing Biblical Truths. In this episode, we'll be studying Genesis 9 through 11, which talks about the covenant with Abraham, the genealogies of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and the Tower of Babel. There's a lot of information in this section, and I'll be bringing in information from the book of Jubilees and the book of Jasher to provide more insight into these events. But before we get into it, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, click the notification bell, and comment down below if you want to see me cover other topics. So Genesis 8 left off, and Noah had just got off the ark. Genesis 9 starts out with saying Yah is telling Noah that the animals will be afraid of him because he is now allowed to eat them. Prior to the flood, man only ate plants. But he tells Noah not to eat anything with blood in it. We know from Leviticus that the soul is in the blood, so we should not be eating this. Then in verse 11, Yah says, "And I will establish my covenant with you. Neither shall all flesh be cut off any more by the waters of a flood, neither shall any more of a flood destroy the earth." And Elohim said, "This is the token of the covenant which I make between me and you, and every living creature that is with you. For my perpetual generations, I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth." After this, Noah planted a vineyard and was drunk off the wine. Ham had entered Noah's tent and saw his nakedness, and then told his brothers. His brothers then, facing backwards, covered Noah up so they couldn't see. Then Noah curses Canaan, Ham's son. He says Canaan will be the servant of the other families. It then says Noah lived 950 years and then he died. Chapter 10 goes through the generations of the three sons. The first is Japheth. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, and Magog, and Madai, and Javan, and Tubal, and Meshech, and Tyrus. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, and Riphath, and Togarmah. And the sons of Javan, Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. You may recognize some of these names that are associated with certain areas of the world. Gomer is Germany, Madai, the Medes, Yawan is Greece and Turkey, and Meshech is Russia. Then it discusses the sons of Ham. The sons of Ham, Cush, and Mizraim, and Phut, and Canaan. Mizraim is Egypt, Phut is Libya, Cush is Ethiopia and the Sudan, and Canaan is Palestine. And the sons of Cush, Sheba, and Havilah, and Sabta, and Raamah, and Sabtekah, and the sons of Raamah, Sheba, and Dedan. And Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before Yahuwah, wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod the mighty hunter before Yahuwah. And in the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar. Out of that land went forth Ashur, and builded a Nineveh, and the city of Rehoboth, and Calah, and Rezin between Nineveh and Calah, the same as that great city. And Mizraim begat Ludim, and Ananim, and Lehabim, and Naphtuim, and Pathrusim, and Casluhim, out of whom came the Philistines, and Caphtorim. And Canaan begat Sidon his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusite, and the Amorite, and the Girgasite, and the Arvadite, and the Zemarite, and the Hamathite, and afterward were the families of Canaanites spread abroad. Okay, now let's stop here and talk about Nimrod a little more. It says he began to be a mighty one in the earth, and a hunter before Yahuwah. In the book of Jasher, chapter 7, it talks about Nimrod, and how he was able to become a mighty one, also called Gibor in Hebrew. And the garments of skin which Elohim made for Adam and his wife, when they went out of the garden, were given to Cush. For after the death of Adam and his wife, his garments were given to Enoch, son of Jared. And when Enoch was taken up to Elohim, he gave them to Methuselah, his son. And at the death of Methuselah, Noah took them and brought them to the ark. And they were with him until he was out of the ark. And in their going out, Ham stole the garments from Noah his father, and took them and hid them from his brothers. And when Ham begat his firstborn Cush, he gave him the garments in secret, and they were with Cush many days. And Cush also concealed them from his brothers and sons. And when Cush had begotten Nimrod, he gave him those garments through his love for him. And Nimrod grew up, and when he was 20 years old, he put on those garments. And Nimrod became strong when he put on the garments. And Elohim gave him might and strength, and he was a mighty hunter in the earth. Yea, he was a mighty hunter in the field, and he hunted the animals, and he built altars, and he offered them upon them the animals before Yahweh. And Nimrod strengthened himself, and he rose up from amongst his brethren, and he fought the battles of his brethren against all their enemies round about. And Yahweh delivered all the enemies of his brethren into his hands, and Elohim prospered him from time to time in his battles, and he reigned upon the earth. And Nimrod dwelt in Shinar, and he reigned securely, and he fought with his enemies, and subdued them, and he prospered in all his battles, and his kingdom became very great. And all nations and tongues heard of his fame. And when they gathered themselves to him, they bowed down to the earth, and they brought him offerings, because he became their Lord and King in the earth over all the sons of Noah, and they were all under his power and counsel. And all the earth was of one language and words of union, but Nimrod did not go in the ways of the Lord. And he was more wicked than all the men that were before him, from the days of the flood until those days. And he made gods of wood and stone, and he bowed down to them, and he rebelled against Yahweh, and taught his subjects and the people of the earth his wicked ways. And Mardon his son was more wicked than his father. So when he got these garments from his father Cush, he became strong. This is the origin of the golden fleece mythology. After this he fought many battles, and Yah was even with him. However, after a time he started to turn away from Yah, and worshipped false gods and false idols. Continuing with the sons of Shem, the children of Shem, Elam, and Ashur, and Arphaxad, and Lud, and Aram, and the children of Aram, Uz, and Hul, and Gether, and Mash, and Arphaxad begat Selah, and Selah begat Eber. And unto Eber were born 2 sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. And Joktan begat Almodad, and Sheleph, and Hazarmeth, and Jerah, and Hadaram, and Uzal, and Diklah, and Obal, and Abiel, and Sheba, and Ophir, and Havilah, and Jobab. All these were the sons of Joktan. And that's the end of chapter 10. Chapter 11 talks about the Tower of Babel. And the whole earth was of one language and one speech. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said to one another, Go to, let us make brick, and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime they had for mortar. And they said, Go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make a name, lest we be scattered abroad the whole face of the earth. And Yahweh came down to see the city and the tower, which the children of men builded. And Yahweh said, Behold, the people are one, and they have all one language. And this they begin to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and there confuse their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So Yahweh scattered them from abroad, from thence upon all the face of the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore the name of it is called Babel, because Yahweh did there confound the language in all the earth. And from thence did Yahweh scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth. So Nimrod had an idea to reach into heaven. If we understand that the earth is a plane with a firmament overhead, as Genesis clearly teaches, then we would know, and it makes sense, they would actually reach into heaven. It even says that if Yah had not come down to confuse the languages, that they would have done anything they imagined to do. Now if we go back to the book of Jasher, chapter 9, we get more detail of what led up to the building of the tower. And all the families assembled, consisting of about 600,000 men, and they went to seek an extensive piece of ground to build the city and the tower. And they sought in the whole earth, and they found none like the valley at the east of the land of Shinar, about 2 days' walk. And they journeyed there and dwelt there. And they began to make bricks and burn fires to build the city and the tower that they had imagined to complete. And the building of the tower was unto them a transgression and a sin, and they began to build it. And whilst they were building against the Lord of God of heaven, they imagined in their hearts to war against him and to ascend into heaven. And all these people and all the families divided themselves into 3 parts. The first said, "We will ascend into heaven and fight against him." The second said, "We will ascend into heaven and place our own gods there and serve them." And the third part said, "We will ascend to heaven and smite him with bows and spears." And God knew all their works and all their evil thoughts, and he saw the city and the tower which they were building. And when they were building, they thought they built themselves a great city, a very high and strong tower, and on account of its height, the mortar and bricks did not reach the builders in their ascent to it, until those who had gone up completed a full year, and after that they reached to the builders, and gave them mortar and the bricks, and thus it was done daily. Behold, these ascended and others descended in the whole day, and if a brick should fall from their hands and get broken, they would weep over it. And if a man fell over and died, none of them would even look at him. And the Lord knew their thoughts. And it came to pass, when they were building, that they cast arrows toward heaven, and all the arrows fell upon them filled with blood. And when they saw them, they said to each other, "Surely we have slain those that are in heaven." For this was from the Lord in order to cause them to err, and in order to destroy them from off the face of the ground. And they built the tower in the city, and they did this thing daily, until many days and years were elapsed. And God said to the 70 angels, who stood foremost before him, to those who were near to him, saying, "Come, let us descend and confuse their languages, that one man shall not understand the language of his neighbor." And they did so unto him. And from that day following, they forgot each man his neighbor's tongue, and could not understand to speak in one tongue. And when the builders took from the hands of his neighbor lime or stone, which he did not order, the builder would cast it away and throw it upon his neighbor, that he would die. And they did so many days, and they killed many of them in this fashion. And the Lord smote 3 divisions that were there, and he punished them according to their works and their designs. To those who said, "We will ascend into heaven and serve our gods," they became like apes and elephants. And those who said, "We will smite the heavens with arrows," the Lord killed them, one man through the hand of his neighbor. And the 3rd division of those who said, "We will ascend and fight against him," the Lord scattered them throughout the earth. Very interesting, huh? Now if we go to the book of Jubilees, chapter 10, verse 22, it tells us the dimensions of the tower. And they built it 43 years they were building it, and its breadth was 203 bricks, and its height was 5,433 cubits and 2 palms, and the extent of one wall was 13 stades, and the other 30 stades. Now, one stade is 607 feet, or 1/8 of a mile, so one wall was 13 stades, or 1.5 miles long, and the other wall was 30 stades, or about 3 miles long, and its height was 5,433 cubits, which would equate to about 9,331 feet, or almost 2 miles tall. That's a huge building. Today's tallest skyscrapers are only a quarter of that. The close of the chapter discusses Nahor, who begat Terah, who then begat Abraham, and his 2 brothers Nahor and Haran. Haran died in Ur, while Nahor and Abraham took wives. Those 2, as well as Terah their father, went from Ur to the land of Canaan. We don't really get a lot of info here about Terah, but there's a reason that these guys moved from Ur. It discusses Terah further in the book of Jasher, from chapters 7 through chapter 12. And Terah, the son of Nahor, prince of Nimrod's host, who was in those days very great in the sight of the king and his subjects, and the king and princes loved him, and they elevated him very high. And Terah took a wife, and her name was Amthalo, the daughter of Cornebo, and the wife of Terah conceived and bare him a son in those days. Terah was 70 years old when he begat him, and Terah called the name of his son that was born to him Abram, because the king had raised him in those days, and dignified him above all the princes that were with him. And Terah his father, in those days, still a captain of the host of Nimrod, and he still followed strange gods. From there, it goes into great detail about Abraham finding Terah's false idols and confronting him about it. Nimrod found out and wanted to kill Abraham, But Abraham consulted Shem, and Shem told Terah what he was saying was true. Finally, Terah agreed, and they all left Ur and went to Canaan. There was a lot in this section, but it was good information and provides a lot of detail on what happened. It's important to know the backstory of these events, because it makes more sense when you understand them. Next time on Revealing Biblical Truths, we go into the story of Abraham and the fall of Sodom and Gomorrah. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.